Okay, good evening again. Today I'm going to be talking about exploring gender expression from the 17th century to the 21st century. My name is Chatrak, and I would like to thank P. Jazz and P. Faye for coming to be my guest judge. And let's begin. So first are my research questions. I have three research questions. First is, how does Shakespeare's Sonnet 93 reflect how men in the 17th century expressed love through gendered expectations? Number two is, how does Billie Eilish's The Greatest portray how women express love in the 21st century through doing gender? And number three, how do the expressions of love and gender differentiate between Shakespeare's Sonnet 93 and Billie Eilish's The Greatest across history? These are just my discussion section. So first, let's dive into the analysis of Sonnet 93. We learned this in class, but a brief overview is basically Shakespeare. He's an English playwright and poet. His the central idea of Sonnet 93 is emotional restraint and choosing to live in blissful and willful ignorance. He also focused on this contradictory between appearance versus reality, like how he thought about the fair youth in the sonnet. And historical context on this is, back in the 17th century, control, rationality, and restraint is considered the main traits you want to have for you to be perceived as masculine, for you to be perceived as manly. And emotional excess or showing too much passion, showing too much emotion is considered as a sign of weakness. Male honor is also heavily tied to reputation back in the 17th century. So if you were to have bad reputation, you show too much emotions, people will start perceiving you as someone of weakness, and that also drags your honor down. Stoicism is also associated with moral and social superiority, meaning that if you are stoic, if you don't show too much emotion and you're not too much in general, you are seen as a person with higher moral and you are more superior socially. Now, The Greatest by Eilish. She is an American singer-songwriter, and she is a defining artist in the 21st century. The central idea of the song is emotional labor and how women struggle in the 21st century with identity and boundaries. So gender norms in the 21st century, this is a historical context. First is, gender is becoming increasingly more socially constructed. More people are talking about it, and more people are talking about the more genders that have come up and the way to perform it. Emotional openness is also more culturally recognized and encouraged, meaning that if you open social media nowadays, you will see a lot more celebrities talking about emotions and talking about how mental health matters and how people should become more aware of it. Communication is also prioritized in intimacy. Again, if you open any social media platform, you will see that for a good relationship, you have to communicate, and that is even prioritized over intimacy. Emotional labor is often feminized. However, like, even though people nowadays are encouraging emotional openness, feminization of emotional labor is still a very big thing, and women now are more measured on how good they are at soothing someone else's emotion, how well they deal with someone else's emotional incapabilities. So two theories I used was doing gender and discourse. Let's tie Sonnet 93 to the theory of discourse. First, my first point is, appearance equals moral truth. In lines 1 and 2, so shall I live supposing thou art true, like a deceived husband, so love's face. These two lines basically translate to, so shall I continue living in this ignorance, even though I know that you are lying to me, but I am willing to live as a deceived husband because I still believe in the way you look. This ties to how back in the 17th century, your outward appearance matters more than anything. And second is, public reputation outweighs private feelings. In lines 4, Shakespeare wrote that thy looks with me, thy heart in other place. This is him recognizing that the fair youth is in love with someone else. She likes someone else, but this is also him showing that he's not going to do anything about it. He's choosing to live in ignorance. And this ties with how public reputation, because if he were to admit that the fair youth is deceiving him, he has to face public humility and public backlash. And Sonnet 93 to doing gender, Shakespeare does gender by suppressing jealousy to avoid appearing weak. Lines 5 and 6, he wrote that, for there can live no hatred in thine eye, therefore in thy eye cannot know thy change. He did not see any hatred while he looked into the fair youth's eye. He couldn't see any type of resentment or anything. So he is saying there is no physical proof, no emotional proof that you don't like me anymore. So I'm going to choose to believe that you still like me. Second point, enduring pain to maintain honor. line 7 and 8. In many looks, the false heart's history is writ in moods and frowns and wrinkles strange. He's basically saying most people express emotional discomfort or discomfort in the relationship by frowns, by moods, by their facial expression, but Fair Youth, yet again, had no expression of this, so he is choosing to maintain this pain, this doubt, in order to maintain his honor as a man. Now, the greatest tying to the discourse theory, emotional labor is expected from women. Line 1 and 2, she sings that I'm trying my best to keep you satisfied. This shows that she is trying her best to accept that this is how she has to act, because it is said that in the 21st century, women are their value is measured much more to how much they can accommodate another person's feelings. And the second point is worth is tied to patience and endurance. Line 11 and 12 states that all my love and patience, all my admiration. This ties to my point in a way that she showed patience, admiration, and endurance. And because in the 21st century, woman is so measured to how much space you can give to one person and how much you can minimize your emotions, that this makes a lot more sense. Now, doing gender, Eilish does gender by performing patience instead of confrontation. In lines 32 and 42, she mentions that she waited and waited. This shows that she performed patience and she chose to not confront anyone. She didn't choose to confront herself, and she didn't choose to confront her lover in the situation, because in the 21st century, it is not, although people are saying to talk more about it, she still chose in that situation not to. And number 2 is silencing her own suffering. Lines 5 and 6 says, and you don't want to know how alone I've been. This shows that she silenced her own feelings and minimized how she felt to make the other person feel better. And I want to mention one thing. Although in the 21st century, people are coming out and saying you should talk more about emotions, that's exactly what Eilish did in the situation of the song. But after her writing the song and publishing the song is her going against that discourse and coming out and saying that, hey, I'm also talking about these types of things too. Now, similarities is emotional labor is not reciprocated. Shakespeare put in effort, stayed loyal, but the Fair Youth did not do that. It was not reciprocated. Second point, endurance is prioritized over confrontation. They both Eilish and Shakespeare showed endurance by staying, waiting, and choosing ignorance, as in Shakespeare, instead of confrontation, because in both scenarios, they thought that confrontation would mean to also ruin their image of themselves. And the third point is personal cost of loving deeply. They both started doubting themselves, choosing ignorance, and choosing an easier way out rather than coming out and talking about it, until, of course, Eilish did in the end by publishing her song. Now, the differences is the expression of emotions. Number 1, silence is seen as strength in the 17th century, while honesty is seen as strength in the 21st century. Second point is gender expectations. Masculinity is defined by restraint in the 17th century, like how Shakespeare held himself back from being emotionally honest. And femininity is defined by self-advocacy, like again, Eilish writing about the song, publishing the song, and performing the song is her showing that she's advocating for women in the 21st century as well as herself. So in conclusion, love is shaped by social expectations. Love is shaped by the unspoken rules of our society. And although in the 17th century it is different from now, you can still tell that across this long period of time, you are still expected to be a certain way. Emotional labor is still central in both worlds. There is still emotional labor when emotional effort is not being reciprocated. Sonnet 93 talks about silence that preserves masculine honor, and the greatest in general talks about honesty enables self-respect. Lastly, society influences how love is expressed. These are my references, and thank you for listening. We're in the Q&A section.